I don't think 2023 is a bad year for video games. And if anyone replies to me with, yeah, but Call of Duty and Fortnite have gone to my answer would be yes. Yes. But that didn't happen this year, everybody. They were always not that good. Call me a hipster for saying that, but I honestly, I don't think those big, like, super every 12-year-old in the world plays this games are the ones which should be competing for your time. And that generally is what people are like, oh yeah, well 2023 is the year that both Call of Duty started going to and like becoming all SJWE by banning Nick Mercs. I'm just like, guys, I don't care. I'm not really plugged into that world at all. I used to like playing the campaigns every now and then, but even that, like once Vanguard got announced, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not buying this. I'm sorry. You're now being ridiculous. Like when you're like, okay, Black Ops Cold War, we're going to do a Cold War thing that's kind of a bit of a different scenario. It's still Black Ops, but we're not doing some futuristic Black Ops or the other thing they did, a multiplayer only version of it. It was just, hey, we're going to the Cold War and we're going to tell a story about like Vietnam and like Russia and conspiracies that are doing all this stuff to deal with Cold War stuff. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm in for that. But everything else since, I'm just like, yeah, no, totally out. Was never really big on the multiplayer. I found Warzone kind of fun for a little while, but when you got into like the third year of people wanting to play Warzone all the time, I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, but like, this sucks, right? Like, it's not that good. It's just your normal battle royale. And generally, because I found that it was very easy to get your own loadout in Warzone by just like calling in a loadout, it kind of nullifies a lot of the tension of a battle royale, which is I need to find better equipment. That when you can just call in the equipment that you have that's perfect for your situation every time, it's like, well, yeah, but now it's just a big death match, right? Like, it's just a big death match where it takes a long time to find people and it's single elimination. Like at that point, it's no longer really the same genre, but I don't know. Still have Spider-Man, Mario Wonder, and Starfield. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to play Spider-Man. And Starfield, I hope it runs well, and I hope it ends up being good. There's a lot of talk on Twitter right now about apparently the areas in which you can explore in the planets are a lot smaller than they seem to have indicated. I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if it's done for structural game design reasons, they're like, okay, we have procedurally generated an entire planet. Most of it is like our planet. There's not a lot going on for a big chunk of the surface area of our planet, especially if our planet only had 3 cities, right? Imagine if New York, Los Angeles, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, like all of those cities still existed, but you were in Ohio. How long would it take you to find a city? Like if you're just walking, there's not a lot. Like I'm just saying that there wouldn't be a lot on a planet that has just 2 or 3 cities. So I do kind of understand why you would want to railroad the player into the areas that are interesting and actually have content to a degree. But at the same time, I don't know, then why couldn't you get it to 60 FPS on Series X, It's like, you did sort of say that the reason it was impossible to get this thing running above 30 FPS on console was because these worlds are just massive and gigantic and all of it's kind of being kept track of at the same time. So it's like, well, was that the reason, though? Because if the areas are, like, if it's just, I don't know, like take like one of the Baldur's Gate 3 areas. They're big, and I loved Baldur's Gate 3. I'd be actually totally fine if Starfield cities were the size of those area, especially if they were as densely packed with content. But then you cause a lot of confusion when you start telling people, it's like, yeah, we've just created a universe. There's 1,000 planets. You can explore them. They're all full-blown planets, and yeah, the universe is yours. Go nuts. You can do whatever you want. That becomes a bit different than we have set a very structured role-playing in this setting that kind of looks like a big explorable universe, but it is still a game, you know, like we're telling a story that needs to fit within these structures, so we can't just have everyone going just wherever they want, doing anything. The end result's going to be that a lot of people do not have fun because there's not much to do in those areas. Spider-Man, though, I think Spider-Man, it's going to be like, I feel like I might be one of the only people that I'm like, the maker or breaker on Spider-Man for me is just going to be the story. Like that's actually it, because I'm not really excited about anything else about that game. Not even a little bit either. Like it's like, well, it's like, yeah, but you can swing around New York as Spider-Man. Be like, yeah, I have Spider-Man like 2018 or 2019 on PC and PS5 even, and PS4, and I have the Miles Morales game as well, and it's the same city. I mean, yeah, you can go to Brooklyn now, I guess, or Queens, was it? Yeah, I think you can go to Queens, so it's like, that's cool, but I don't know that web slinging around the suburbs of Queens is exactly the thing that I would have on my high priority things I want to do in a Spider-Man game list, because I think the first Insomniac game realistically had everything that I would want to be doing in a Spider-Man game in it. So there's no feature which they can add that'll make me see like, finally, like, you could say the black suit, but I'm like, the way they've applied the black suit though, I don't necessarily think it's what I would have been excited about. Like if it was just, hey, there's a black suit and you're significantly stronger and it plays into the story in a really deep and meaningful way, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that I'm in. When they're like, yeah, now you have Carnage's powers, I'm just like, well, I mean, it's not like that. It's not like that means it's definitely bad, but also I don't know that that's enough to get me excited, and nothing they've shown me of the story makes any sense. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it won't make sense in the main game. I'm saying it doesn't make sense what they've shown. It's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, now we got Kraven the Hunter's coming after us, and oh, by the way, there's the black suit. But where'd this black suit come from? I don't know. We haven't told you yet. And also, Venom's gonna show up at some point because he's our collector's edition statue. So it's like, well, I mean, you didn't hide Venom, you didn't hide the black suit, you didn't really give any context as to how either of them entered the story, so why am I excited? You know, like, I don't, because, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be excited, I'm saying that for me, it's like, if the story is what I was interested in, it's like, I want to know what's going to happen next in this Spider-Man universe. You could have just made this DLC for 2018 if you want. I would have been totally fine with that, as long as it had a decent story with good writing and a solid Spider-Man tale, like a little Spider-Man movie that I can play through. I'm totally fine with that. But I feel like the more they start trying to throw into Spider-Man gameplay to make it new and interesting, the less it's gonna feel like it's Spider-Man. Like now, but where I got bothered by it is when I saw Peter Parker also had that little Spider-Man wingsuit, because in the trailer when they cut across to Miles had that wingsuit and it sounded kind of cool, like, or it seemed kind of cool. It's like, oh, he has a little wingsuit now, like that, like that's kind of neat. It's something that's pretty common in video games these days, having a wingsuit. But yeah, I mean, sure, I could see Spider-Man having a wingsuit for things like that. And I think that would have been one of the neat ways that you could differentiate the gameplay between Miles and Peter. You know, it's just like maybe Miles can fly around, but then Peter Parker was flying around with the wingsuit thing too in another trailer. So I'm like, oh, okay, so they just play exactly alike, but Miles has Venom powers, I guess. Like the Venom strike thing, not Venom like the character. Oh god, that's confusing. Miles has his electricity powers and can turn invisible and stuff. That's what I meant by his Venom powers, because that is actually what they're called. And I just realized how confusing it's going to be to have a game that has both Miles Morales and Venom in it. I feel like I could pretty easily get thrown off Starfield for technical reasons. I don't think that's going to be a problem for Spider-Man at all. I'm imagining Spider-Man's going to run fine on PS5. But I don't know that I want to spend the money on it, because I'm like, well, I'm not really that pumped for it. So should I just skip it? Because it's like $95 in Canada, and that's like, that's not cheap. Well, I mean, the one good thing about Starfield as far as waiting is concerned and money up front is concerned is it being on Game Pass does let you just fire it up if you want, if you have Game Pass, or you're $10 away from trying Starfield for the month. It's about the same amount of money that you would spend on like Final Fantasy 14. So I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of very easy points of entry for Starfield that you don't have for Armored Core 6 and will not have for Spider-Man. So that is a bit of a plus. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the next few months will be like gaming wise, but it's I think 2023 has been a absolutely incredible year for video games, and I believe that if you don't agree with that, then you're focusing on the wrong video games, and you should play different games. Because once again, if your response is 2023 has been the worst because it's the year that Call of Duty went woke, I'm immediately checked out. I'm just like, no, that's not what, like, that shouldn't matter to you at all from the beginning. Anyways, like that is the kind of thing that's like, if that's your list of priorities, I don't think I can actually help you as far as like zeroing in on what kind of games you should be playing. But I think that if you feel that there have been no good games this year, it will seem to most people who have been playing a lot of the games coming out this year that you just have been focusing on the wrong type of games, because there's some real damn good stuff. Worry about them sidelining Spider-Man for Miles. Well, I mean, it's looking like Peter Parker might be, if not the villain, then an antagonist for a good chunk of the film of the game. So I guess be ready for that. But at the same time, I'd be okay with that if the story's good. You know, like I don't necessarily think that would automatically make the story bad. I just haven't seen nearly enough about the story for me to care yet. Never mind be excited about it. I don't even care about what's going on in the story, because I don't have any context for any of it. It seems like all they've really done is shown, hey, there's going to be these Spider-Man villains in it, and Spider-Man's going to have these powers, and here's some hints about where the story might be going, but no context as for how any of it's going down. Like, no idea. Be like, hey, what is this story? What is the main conflict even? Because it's like, well, you don't know what the main maybe it's Kraven, maybe it's Venom. It's probably going to be Venom, but Venom might not show up until the end of the game. And I'm just like, well, do better than that, though. Like, I imagine seeing a trailer for a movie that was just random action scenes and no context as to what the characters were going to be doing. If it was a story-based series, or a series where people did care about the story. I'm not, like, obviously John Wick 5 could pretty easily just be just a collection of action scenes and no one would care. But I think if you were doing a sequel to a story-based thing, it would be odd to not set a premise in a clear way, to be like, hey, so here's the deal with this. Venom is attacking the city, and Kraven the Hunter has been hired to come take out Venom. So here's where the hijinks will ensue. You know, like there's no just bullet point. There's no line to be like, hey, what is actually going on in this story? The only answer is, I don't know, Venom, black suit, I guess. Kraven the Hunter's there, and Lizard's there. Miles is there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not really a great way to hook it. Where, I mean, I guess, yeah, Final Fantasy 16, I think, is a pretty good example of a trailer that sets things up pretty well, where they say, yeah, like, it's this guy is a young man who has his brother, and you kind of assume that his brother is killed or his family's killed for some reason, and the story might take place at certain points in his youth and then later points in his adulthood, and it's about him grappling with the people who can turn into summons, like having the whole like come to me Ifrit thing at the end, and like that was the big deal where it's like, oh my god, so like we're playing as Ifrit essentially, like you can turn into him and stuff. I thought that was a pretty good way to set up a premise that made a Final Fantasy character, Final Fantasy player want to play it. Whereas I think with Spider-Man, they're relying on you being excited because it's Spider-Man, not being excited because it looks like they're going to be telling a really compelling Spider-Man story. That said, I didn't think the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home looked interesting at all either, and I did end up liking that quite a lot. So I'm not saying Spider-Man will not be good. I'm saying I'm not 100% convinced that it's definitely going to be good the way a lot of people are. I guess that's probably the way I'd put it. I think that the original Spider-Man game had the benefit of not having to do anything but present, hey, you're Spider-Man in this game. You know, because it was new, and it was like, hey, we're gonna show you how the web slinging works in this and how beautiful our New York is, and that was enough to get people interested in that game. But the sequel, I feel like they've really overestimated how much it is going to be difficult to make a Spider-Man game play any differently than the Spider-Man game that came before it. And I think that's why they hit the panic button and gave Peter Parker Carnage's powers and in the black suit, because they didn't want him to just be Spider-Man but stronger, which is what black suit Spider-Man is. So I don't know. I'm a little worried about it, and I'm not 100% sure I'm going to play it right away. I might just wait for the PC port, which, I mean, speaking of Final Fantasy 16, it's what I wish I did for that one, because I think it runs like trash. But, oh God, I'll never forgive Square Enix for that, especially because they're being like, well, this was designed up from the PS5, so it's going to run beautifully. It's like, well, then why can't you figure out a performance mode that isn't giving me an aneurysm? Like, it's just like, I feel my brain exploding while trying to track the side quests in that game, because walking around the world maps just feels so bad. And it blew my mind even harder that they managed to even out the performance for the combat, because like, well, you can do it, so why aren't you doing it everywhere? Or again, just make the game not have to look so nice. Okay, I can deal with a well-written game that has good gameplay and runs well and doesn't look that great, or doesn't look quite as great as Final Fantasy 16, which, if you look at a screenshot, arguably has some of the best visuals in any game ever. But like, I don't need the best visuals in any game ever. I need a game that can perform all right on the exclusive hardware that you released it on. So that bothered me, and I think that if Sony starts doing that more, I may strongly reconsider ever buying a non-pro Sony piece of hardware. Like, I'll be like, I'm not getting a PlayStation 6, because there's going to be 3 years of PlayStation 6 games that run well, and then after that, everything's going to run like, and everything's going to be capped at 30 FPS, and then you're going to say to everyone like, oh, well, good news, gamers who like games that run well, you can spend another $600 and buy the PS5 Pro. F you, okay? Just design the games to run on your hardware. That's all I want you to be able to do. I don't need them to look as nice. Sell the PS4 Pro to the people who want the games to look way better and have crazy ray tracing on. Sure, make it $1,000. That would actually probably be a better idea. Honestly, it would. If you just had it so that the games all ran well on the normal PS5, and then the PS5 Pro is where you get the quality modes with ray tracing and all that stuff, and then it still runs well because you spent $800 on that PS5, I think that would be a much better idea than starting to just have games run like on your hardware and then saying, oh yeah, and here's the PS5 Pro, everybody. The solution you've all been waiting for. It's like the solution that I've been waiting for is for you to keep your ambitions in the pocket, okay? Just do what your hardware can do. Don't push it beyond its limits. If you find you have a concept that is pushed beyond the limits of this hardware, awesome. You know what happens every 6 or 7 years? New hardware comes out. So if you have to make your game on console, pencil that, start taking notes on that concept, get that ready to go for when the next generation of hardware comes out, but focus your current gen development on games that the current gen can run. I don't think that should be a crazy take. Oh, honestly, yeah, and like the people saying, oh, 8K's next, baby. I'm like, no, stop. No. 4K's fine. Let's just hold on 4K so the games can actually run well for the next 20 years. Because if we push to 8K, games are going to be running like for the next 20 years. Because developers are always going to be pushing for that. Now, if you look really closely and then enhance ×5 and take out a magnifying glass, you'll see that you can still clearly see the reflection of that bookcase at the other end of the room inside of the eye of this character. I'll be like, this is a first-person shooter. I'm not looking at the eye. I'm shooting at the head. I don't care if I can see the reflection of someone's eye, in a reflection of something else in full detail in someone's eye in the middle of a video game. Because you know what? Here, Armored Core 6, all right? This is how fast I'm moving in this game. I do not need to be able to see reflections in stuff to that kind of degree. I think that that's silly. And I think that you should not want it. I think if you do want it, you like aesthetics more than you like video games. And I don't think that there's a way for you to argue that either. Because I think that ultimately there's no one who likes video games would prefer that the game play poorly and look nicer. Only people who care about aesthetics would say that. Video game players tend to want the video games to play well. When you're limited, yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. Limitations make good developers think of ways that they can utilize those limits to maximize what you can do with them. They don't say, oh, here's the limit, time to push it and go over 9,000 with my power level and become Super Saiyan 5 or whatever it would be. You know, like, no. Just learn, what's the first move? Kaioken 1 or something like that. Like, just do the Kaioken strikes. The first one that Goku was learning. Don't worry about going Super Saiyan, okay? We don't need you Super Saiyan. You're fighting Piccolo. It's like, I'm sorry, if this game was running at a frame rate, it would be more difficult to play than I can possibly imagine. I can't imagine someone playing this game at 30 FPS and being able to do it and not die of motion sickness.